Welcome back, everybody, to A Dram and a Blether. I'm Chance, that's Gary, that's Ryan. We are here, and we're really excited because this week we're going to Lagavulin Distillery. Lagavulin, Prince of Whiskeys. We're going to head on over there. We did Ardbeg last week. We're continuing the LA Big Three with the Lagavulin, and I'm super stoked about it.
Chance, who's the king of whiskeys then?
If Lagavulin's the
king?
prince, then I'm the
Yeah,
king of...
You're the king of whiskey.
Of whiskey,
Okay.
yeah. We
Yeah.
bow to you, Chance.
Don't do that.
No.
No, I'm not even the popper of whiskey.
The jester. You're the jester of whiskey. Chance.
Okay, I'll take
Jester
that.
of whiskey.
I'll take that. I'll do a little dance for a dram.
So wait,
Yeah.
let's rewind here a little bit. Is Lagavulin really touted to be the prince of whiskeys? Is that actually like a thing?
For many years, in the 90s and the 2000s, that was kind of, we say, this
see.
is like the prince. It's like the Rolls Royce of whiskies. It's very much the prince. It was very like a delicious one. And it's probably more from anecdotal stories in Scotland that people very much, that's what we would talk about it. But anyway, coming back, just distance-wise, we're at Ardbeg last week. And so if we were walking out the gate of Ardbeg, walk on there's a little path, and you follow the path for about a mile along the coast, you will come to Lagavulin. We'll just be in the front door of Lagavulin. We'll knock on there, go in. They've got a beautiful tasting room with a big mahogany table, sitting down. Really beautiful place for doing all the tastings. And that leads us very nicely into today's tastings. The first one we're going to do is the Lagavulin 8. And that 8-year-old, now traditionally, that wasn't around for a long time, but it only came out in 2016 because they were celebrating their 200th anniversary. So 1816, when John Johnson was the guy that opened up there. Now, obviously, the classic distillery had been illicitly distilling there since 1742, and 1816 is when it got its license and joined the good tax-paying people, and given the British government some of their tax due with that one. So they brought this out, and why? What question you could ask is, if they're bringing it out, why didn't they do a 16-year-old for bringing it out? Well, they did the 8 because at the time, 200 years ago, or not 200 years ago, in 1886, there was Alfred Barnard, and he was the guy that kind of went and did the first whiskey writer effectively in the 1880s, and he did a tour of Scotland and he visited every single distillery at the time. And when he came to Lagavulin, now he called it a very exceptional whiskey, and what they served him was an 8-year-old. So this is a replica of a whiskey that he might have had at the time, but with modern day techniques.
Including the types of casks that it's aged in and things like that.
Yeah,
So basically.
So that's good. Very good question, because you could have tripped me up there and said, "Hey, but the casks back then wouldn't have been bourbon casks, so it wouldn't have been the ex-bourbon." So they have actually done with some. It's now ex-bourbon casks they've used. It's more the spirit of it. They've done an 8-year-old like that. That they've been.
I was
putting in
about to
there.
say, because when I smelled the nose, I was not getting any of the sherry notes that I get with, say, the
No.
Distillers edition, which is
No.
a sherry monster.
Exactly, which is probably nearer what they would have been having then. But anyway, oh my goodness. On the nose, just for us starting off with this one, my goodness.
Strength. It's got power and strength.
Oh, that
I
is.
think.
No, it's certainly on the nose. That's like a very. I mean, you're certainly getting the Lagavulin peat hitting you.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of the
so-
iodine.
Yep. I mean, the usual things now. As we're kind of learning, the ppm's not the end all of whiskies, but this is now done at 35 ppm. I think the better way of describing it is maybe more like a medium peat. We can even say a light peat, medium peat, heavy peat. We'll call the heavy peats the Ardbegs and the Octomore. But I'd say the Lagavulin's more that medium peat. And that now this, I mean, look at the first of all. Oh, actually, I jumped right past it. I was going to say the colour, but then I was actually thinking, Mr. Label Man. Any thoughts? I mean, Lagavulin. I mean, all of them really follow the same.
I don't actually own this bottle, unfortunately. I do have a bottle of the 12, which we're not doing this today. But the label, much like the whiskey inside this bottle, is pale. The whiskey is the palest of pale straw colors, I think. And then the label, I guess they're going to associate age with darkness or something of that sort. All the Lagavulin labels tend to cleave to each other in terms of label design, which is why I like the Nick Offerman bottle, which we're going to see in here in a bit. It's they don't have the same kind of whimsy, I think, that Ardbeg does with their bottles. Nevertheless, this is a stately, I think, a dignified label. Ardbeg
Yeah.
seems to have thrown a bit of the old dignity out the door with the ability to appeal to a wider audience with, you know, typical dad joke type stuff and naming their whiskeys and some of their ad copy. Um,
Yeah.
this much like the whiskey that I love so much, the Glendronach Parliament. This label looks like it belongs on a legal tender. It looks like it's an 8-pound note. It's got the serif font, Lagavulin across the top.
Yeah.
It's just a very dignified, timeless kind of design. I enjoy all the Lagavulin bottles.
Yeah, no, I think they're very classy. So maybe that's part of that distinction they get now, is like kind of like the Rolls Royce of whiskies. I mean, if you look, so you look at this one, the legs on it, again, lots of legs, and swirl that around, and look at that. You just see the oiliness of it, which is, Lagavulin's one of the things we kind of come to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we're saying heavy on the nose. That sea spray, it's a bit like there's a sweet peat even, very light. But do you know what? I could actually mistake it a little bit for some of the Highland peat ones, because it's a little bit meaty, but there's a sweetness underneath it. It's not quite as fully pungent as a 16-year-old has fully developed.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't have the
sampled this.
Right.
I think the sea really hit me on the palate immediately. It was like I'm swimming in Santa Cruz Bay, in the bay off Santa Cruz, and a wave crashed on my face and seawater went up my nose. That's kind of like what I'm getting with the first sip of this. It's very powerful and pungent. I think the youth of the whiskey contributes to that. I'm not getting any sherry, no sherry whatsoever.
Yeah, then there's nothing done in that. But you're right, on the tongue, you're really getting that sea spray. It was like, you're right. Yeah. It's a feeling as if you're standing. But I suppose think yourself on the coast at Lagavulin. Now you're facing out to the Atlantic and you're getting that cold sea spray coming at you.
Yeah, like
Santa Cruz is probably nicer. Yeah.
Like waves are crashing up against a rock and shooting all shit into the air, and you stand there amidst the fury of the storm. Like, that's the sense I get.
If there are any of our viewers out who have actually never been to the sea, I guess maybe they're from, I don't know, like, the Midwest or something. They've never seen the sea.
Ooh.
Like when you see the sea on a video or on a movie, it looks so romantic and beautiful, the spray coming up when it crashes on the rocks. But like when you stand next to the sea, it just smells a lot like dead shit. Rotting seaweed, various like dead maritime animals and stuff like that. And like it's true, right?
Reminiscent of that. Yeah.
It's reminiscent of that. Maybe not the dead maritime animal stuff, but more like the seaweed kind of decomposition, very organic. That's what I would say. It's very organic.
I will say
is what I get from all these Islay whiskeys.
I get much more of the lady in the long white dress standing on the cliff with the ocean shooting up around her. I get much more of that than I do dead fish from this one.
Yeah, this tastes more like what someone from the Midwest thinks the sea smells like than what the sea actually smells like.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, particularly the sea in Scotland, particularly the ocean over there. Yeah, no, it's delicious. No, it's really good. Oh, I suppose Chance, I know you always research the names of our distilleries. What about Lagavulin? What did you get as the name?
So Lagavulin stands for Hollow of the Mill. Which I don't know what that means, but that's where the name comes from. There was a bunch of stuff with Lagavulin when I was researching the distillery that I thought was really, really fascinating. So for instance, like the distillery itself wasn't the only distillery on site when it was founded. Like in 1817, there was another one. Lagavulin was there, but there was also what they think was called Kildalton. In 1816, and there were two distilleries, and over the next 20 years, Lagavulin basically just absorbed the other one, and it just sort of became one distillery.
So I have another bit of trivia. Is that there's a webpage that features this whiskey, and they also have a recipe for something called the Lagavulin hot chocolate. So if any of our viewers are interested in trying out the Lagavulin hot chocolate, that's something that you can Google and maybe make yourself. Personally, I think the smokiness would go really well with a dark chocolate, perhaps, as sitting around a fire or something.
Ooh, I like that idea.
Nice. That'd be delicious.
This packs a wall up, I feel. This is a very in-your-face whiskey. It's definitely given you, it's definitely kind of given you the eye, It's trying to stand you down and intimidate you, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one, the bottle disc one at 48% ABV for it. So slightly above. Usually they're around about the 46 Lagavulin, so this one did 48.
I would
That
say
said, it still doesn't seem to be over that threshold where adding water would notably improve the flavor or open it up much.
one of the things I think is really interesting about this, like Gary, you were talking about this on a previous instance or episode where you get to a younger whiskey and you get closer to the distillation. So you're further from like the wood influence and more towards like what it was distilled at. And that's something that I think is really interesting with this, because Lagavulin 16, of course, is the known Lagavulin. It's the one that everybody talks about. When you talk about Lagavulin, it's the Lagavulin 16.
Yeah.
Many, many people's favorite whiskey. And the difference between that and this, I really, really find fascinating because from this I get so much more of that maritime sea spray, that sea salt, that it's so much more bright and shiny than I think the Lagavulin 16 that I get. And even the whiskey, for something that's such an intense flavor to it, is incredibly pale.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is this versus the Wee Beastie, for example, both young Islay whiskeys born a mile from each other,
Yeah.
Ooh.
I think, and then so the Wee Beastie's done it like 55 ppm, a little bit more exposure to the peat. But then the other thing, remember I was saying like light peat, medium peat, heavy peat.
Mm-hmm.
It's the actual big part that can expose it. So if you take like 100 pounds of barley, and they'll say 20 ppm or 35 or 55, meaning they're maybe taking 55 pounds of it and exposing it. So there'll be a portion that isn't. So when you mix it all together, that's when you get like your weighting of it. But that's stage one. So as you know, now when they're drying the barley, and they're drying it out, so as to get the maltose coming out, now to get the starch to convert to sugars, it's wrapping around. And what's wrapping around is phenols. It's all these different types of oily phenols that are wrapping around the husk. Then you put it through distillation. The next part is really important, because if you've ever wondered, wait a minute, if they're all doing it, say roughly the same ppm, why is the flavours not a lot closer? Well, what's happening? The next decision the distillery manager has to do is when to take the cut. So as they're running it through the whole process, depending on when you take that cut, if you take it earlier, then you're not going to get as many of the heavy phenol oils coming through. You take it a little bit later, you're going to get more. So that's actually maybe even more important than the actual peatiness of what they've put in. It's when they take that cut. So then, if you get like a Lagavulin, or like as we visited earlier on, is Kalila, and if you have that, it's actually got an earlier cut, but they're both actually about the same ppm, 35 ppm. So it's got an earlier cut and it's lighter. This one's later, a little bit oily.
I want to call that out because we've never talked about the cut before. And I want to make sure our listeners know what this is. So when you're distilling the whiskey, when it finishes, think of it like there's a hose that the finished whiskey is literally coming out of. And they decide when to point the hose into the barrel. The rest of it's going somewhere else. Like they just get rid of it, or they recycle it, or they do something else with it. They feed it to cows. They turn it into, magical something. Whatever. That's not important. Your cut is when they actually take the hose and they point it into the barrel. And what Gary's talking about here, that's that. Like, depending on when they're emptying the still and such, what parts of it they're getting based on when they point the hose in the barrel. Is that right, Gary?
So actually what's happening is as the distillation starts, as distilling go through the process, so it comes through into when they're going to actually split it, and what they do the cut, what's coming through like a safe it's called, and they would start that cutting. The first part of it's actually poisonous to you, and that's why that's like moonshine. Now moonshine, the people who are drinking it,
that's where Johnny Walker Red comes from. I see.
With that one, no, not at all. Look at you, that's throwing aspersions on that beautiful blend. So it's coming through, and so they'll take that and they actually put it aside. What they actually do with it, with those cuts that they take, they actually feed it back into the stills, and they'll use it on the next distillation, because you can continue to distill this each time. So there's nothing wasted in this process. It's coming out and back in. But when you decide to cut it, at that point, that starts the flow of your whiskey, and then you'll continue doing it till you get to the end of it, and then you'll cut it at the end as well, because you just don't want the last of it's got less, we'll say flavours, for lack of a better word, less flavours. So you want that middle portion is what you're wanting, like that. And so they've got those different cut points, and depending on when the alchemist that's busy making it up and deciding where that whiskey cut is, that there is what gives you the character of the whiskey. From these, particularly in these younger ones, that's what you're going to be getting more of. Anyway, we can come back to that in another time. I think with that, moving from the 8, it's a great time to go to our friend, Mr. Offerman. We'll call it the official celebrity spokesman of them. Like that. Okay, I don't know if we can get a camera picture of him. Oh, there he is. There.
Fine mahogany, and look at that. Looks like that is a woodcut that belongs on a dollar bill. Yeah. Just a beautiful thing, and the same rendition of Mr. Offerman is on the label as well. Not much else to add about this bottle, given how similar all the Lagavulin labels really are to each other. But I do want to, take note of the fine mahogany print cardboard box. And generally the nice woodcut rendition or engraving rendition of Nick Offerman. Just very, look at him. There he is, right there. Yeah. And he signed it. Not every bottle individually, but his signature is on the bottle.
Yeah, he's on the bottle. That's correct. And he's got a little message at the back of it and things like that. Him being obviously from Parks and Recreation, this was the preferred drink
of Ron Swanson.
Exactly. And Ron Swanson was honoured by a visit to the distillery many times, and he's become like the celebrity name for Lagavulin. And so what they did was, this is actually very recent, it was only in 2019, they invited him to a distillery. He chose the barrels because he's a big, as everybody kind of maybe knows, he's a big carpenter, woodman himself. So he was really stoked that they let him choose the barrel mix. And so he was the one chose those, put that blend together, and they basically created this Nick Offerman blend, this 11-year-old that they brought out. So if we look at actually even the colour, look at this, it's a brassy colour, is what he calls it.
It's a little bit darker than the 8.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit darker than the 8, really.
Yeah.
Let's do a side-by-side comparison here.
Yeah.
As you can see, the Offerman bottle's quite a bit darker.
Yeah. And the thing that's actually more interesting in it is that they do add caramel to the Lagavulins. So it was more of my question was, why didn't they add a little bit to the 8-year-old as opposed to leaving it? And I don't know whether they're just leaving it maybe truer to spirit from back now.
Is that one advertised as non-caramel colored?
No, because nobody ever advertises they put caramel in it. No, it's the official now organic caramel. It's the only thing that you can actually add to whiskey is a slight colorant.
No,
it's an organic caramel.
Is that caramel to adjust the flavor, Gary?
No, not at all. Never for that. It's a caramel colorant.
Okay.
So it's an organic colorant, and it's what gives a lot of these for the whole marketing side. The dirty side of the business. If I share one that's really dark with you, you are getting conjured up. So I'm sure Ryan could give us some thoughts about the marketing aspects of now giving you a dark one. Is that making you think that that's richer and better?
I remember you. I think I forget which Ardbeg it was, but you poured me an Ardbeg way back when, and it was just nearly clear. And that was one of the ones that you used to illustrate the effect of caramel colors, because I think culturally you expect something dark to be robust, to be strong, and you expect something light to be like a Michelob,
Yeah, exactly.
Michelob, it's like if it's light, it's got to be like Michelob Ultra, and when in fact it has no bearing whatsoever on the flavor. What about chill filtering, Gary? Or is this one chill filtered?
They're all Lagavulin's non-chill filtered, all the whiskies and that, so they just let it naturally come through. So you got all the fats coming through, all the flavors. They'll never really take anything out. This one actually, so this one is, this is like a big difference with this one. It's interesting just going, we were having the peaty smoke with the 8-year-old, but this actually has got, now this is getting closer to that 60. There's a lot more flavours in there.
It is, and
it's much sweeter. And it's an interesting sweeter. Like, this is not a sherry cask. This is still just bourbon, my understanding, right?
It's more mellow.
Oh, very much more, yes.
8. And yes,
it's subdued. The smoke is subdued. I mean, if you now talk about like the smokiness or the it's not quite as it feels a little bit, it's further back, a little more reserved.
It's more of a well-remembered dream of smokiness than the kind of in-your-face smokiness that the 8 has,
Almost like you walk into a room that had a candle lit yesterday, but hasn't lit the candle yet today.
Yeah, a little bit of.
To me,
smoke, caramels. There's some sweetness in there, but it's not as sweet as the previous one. But that dry sweetness.
But the reason why I'm saying like a well-remembered dream is, for me, the smokiness is not hitting right in the face, right on the tongue.
Yeah.
To me, that the smokiness is developing instantaneously afterwards. It's
okay.
not a you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
I'm
that.
actually getting like.
I get.
Traditionally, when I describe Lagavulins, I'll say like now there's a tea Lip Saint Souchon, which we're going the 16th. I'll probably talk a bit more, but I feel like this is like some of these exotic black teas you can get, some of the oils that you get, some of the Chinese ones, or even like an Earl Grey, which has got bergamot, which I know is in there, but
I almost get a
there's
little
dryness.
bit.
There's something in there.
I almost get a little bit of dried apricot. I don't know where. It's like really, really at the bottom, just on the nose.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly dry fruit in there.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking like a fruit cake. But that's very much a British reference, because there were a lot of time in Great Britain with a fruit cake.
We got fruitcakes here.
Yeah, British fruit
I
cake.
don't think the little
Yeah,
like
different.
pie things you get at the gas station that are filled with like a cherry mash really count. You know, the ones in the sleeve that are square and rectangle.
You've never gotten a bourbon-soaked fruitcake for your Christmas or anything, man?
Yeah.
Oh,
No. No.
Oh, those things are tremendous.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Well, now I got to figure out how to make that happen this week.
I think they got them at Costco right now.
So seaweed, iodine. I mean, it's all the classic things, and it's very subtle.
Ooh.
I mean, imagine he was at the distillery, busy choosing out the mix when they were doing the blend for this.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. This has so much less fire than the 8.
It's very mellow. Extremely mellow.
Yeah, it's smooth. It's complex.
Very good.
The finish is lovely and long. Yeah, the finish
is a lovely go-to, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for Lagavulin fans, I mean, it's a lovely. They've taken that.
And so Ron Swanson, Nick Offerman's character in Parks and Recreation, he refers to this as many different things, including like one of the few good things that came out of Europe and all this sort of stuff. Not my opinion; it's stuff he says on the show. No offense, everybody. I love everywhere. But apparently Lagavulin was talking about the show, like legit, like increased their sales because. Like, if I remember, I read an interview and like one of their managers was like, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it like business didn't go up. It went up because of Ron Swanson.
And the effect is real. I was just watching the news, I think 2 nights ago, and apparently I think Taylor Swift or someone mentioned Olive Garden in one of her songs. And like, sure enough, the CEO of the Olive Garden was on, I think, CNBC a few nights ago, and he was like, man, you know, we're kind of a boomer restaurant, but Taylor Swift mentioning the Olive Garden really galvanized the sales.
Yeah, it is a millennial restaurant.
Now millennials love the Olive Garden. I mean, as a cusp Generation X millennial, I have to say that the breadsticks were one of my favorite foods as a child.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I still love the breadsticks. I dip them in the Alfredo. I have the tour of Italy. Like,
delicious.
Oh yeah.
What Scotch pairs with the unlimited Penne Rustico, Gents?
Yeah.
Ooh, I would probably pour myself a lovely glass of. Ooh, that's a good question. Mm-hmm. I'd probably pour a glass of Glenlivet. But okay, so apparently Nick Offerman was actually a Scotch drinker as well. And so he was really honored. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but obviously this week being Christmas, the Nick Offerman Yule log. Have you seen the Nick Offerman Yule log?
No.
It is a 45-minute long video where he comes in and sits in a leather chair next to a fire with a bottle of Lagavulin 16 on the stand next to him, pours a finger, and then just sits there and stares off into space for 45 minutes, occasionally taking a sip of the Lagavulin, occasionally pouring some more, and at the end of it, gets up and leaves.
I do that. I just need to point a camera at myself.
It's so brilliant. It's like putting like a fake fire on your TV, except there's Nick Offerman drinking Lagavulin. Like, I highly recommend it. I do it every year.
When I'm not on with you guys now, that's why I'm sitting in here. Got my chair, looking off into the air, smelling the whiskey. Yeah, it's delicious. Mr. Offerman. Interesting. So he wasn't drinking his 11. He's drinking a 16.
He's got the Lagavulin 16. No, I think the Yule log may be a couple years old, so it may be before the 11 came out because this was just 2019.
Oh yeah. Yeah, good fact check there. Excellent. Okay, so that was the 11. So now let's get on to, we'll call it, now we're really getting into the Rolls Royce territory here. So this is the one that kind of got them put on the map as it. We'll do the 16. We've got two of them. We've got like they're both 16-year-olds. You've kind of got the 16, and I'll always jump ahead. We've got the double matured 16, which we'll get to. But we'll start with like the classic 16. I mean, this is what it was all about, and that's the one that really did have that classic label. It was like as Ryan was saying, it kind of started a lot of it off. And we know they've got some other ones in the range. They've got like a 12-year-old in the range, and they don't do like Ardbeg every year, like a new edition, but so they're very much more stick to their classic now age ranges. That sounds as though you were like really pulling that cork off down from the depths.
So, gentlemen, I'm about to pour the last dram from this bottle.
Oh
my goodness!
Tired.
Oh,
don't forget to save that cork, Chance.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
So this is so here's the and Ryan, because you're our sherry connoisseur of the one. So the Lagavulin traditionally was very much, it was known for the oak casks and the sherry. Yeah, because look at the colours. I mean, it's like a nice rich. It's not quite as brassy as that 11-year-old, so they've kind of got like a slightly different hue.
So this middle one is the 11. We have 8, 11, 16 on my camera.
Yeah.
And we can see that the 16 does have a slightly different tint to it.
Yeah, a bit, maybe it's a little gold, less brassy, a little bit more goldy, or a deeper hue to it. So this is like, we'll call it their standard one that they've got. They traditionally say they're putting sherry casks in it, but I know, I don't know, say 10 years ago when I was drinking my Lagavulin, when I had the 16, I felt as though it was more sherried. So I don't know whether when they started doing the double, like the double matured Distillers edition, that they kind of maybe pulled back on the sherry they were doing in the 16-year-old one. So if you guys have been, if we've been drinking like 10 years ago, probably we were drinking about 8 years ago, the Lagavulins I would have been giving you then would have been a little bit more sherried, which now we've got much more refined towards noticing it. So let's just start. Now stick our nose into this one.
Perhaps they wanted to accentuate the difference between the 16 and the 16 Distiller edition.
Yeah, probably something in there that's.
That said, I always felt that the sweetness of sherry goes very well with the smokiness of the peat. This is a very well-rounded scent profile for me.
This is what I mean. This is it. This is some toasted oak there. I'm getting to. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's much sherry. There's lots of just nice things that I like in this one. And this is where, like for me, it's the Lapsang Souchon tea. I could sit and sniff this all night. And this was the big. Actually, this is the one. This was the Johnny Depp one. Actually, it was a 16-year-old. Johnny Depp is supposed to be a teetotaler, and he was well known for ordering a glass of the Lagavulin 16 and sitting at a bar, and as he's with friends, he'd just be like sniffing spend the whole time sniffing it. He wouldn't actually drink it, just because it's such a. Now this is the one I could see now. Nick Offerman sitting back with his 16-year-old, because this is even compared to that 11-year-old.
Yeah,
a bit more complexity there.
It's very ethereal and it's strange. But so Lagavulin uses a really slow distillation speed. That's one of the characteristics of them. That and pear-shaped pot stills, and the fact that they add caramel coloring and a couple of other things. But this smells like it was slowly distilled, which makes no sense because that's not a thing you can smell. But maybe it's just in my head, because when I smell this, it smells like the sort of thing that its time was taken to really create something beautiful.
Yeah. This one, I'm letting this one just roll over. Now, put a little bit in your tongue. I know I've had a couple. Put this one and let it roll over either side. Feel those oils? Yeah, it's just
delicious, well-rounded.
And this is where you ask at the beginning why it's called the Prince. It's the Prince of Whiskies. And I'm sure that probably Diageo would do some of the publicity pushing that name, but very much even before that, we used to call this like the Rolls Royce of it. If you were wanting to recommend, before with such a wide range of them, I know that I was aging myself, but drinking in the 80s and 90s, when we'd be talking about like if you wanted, somebody said, well, what do you want as that perfect bottle? You could say like the Macallan, it's always kind of been up there as well, but you'd say, okay, the Macallan, lovely, beautiful, the gentleman's whiskey. But you come to Lagavulin, this is like your Rolls Royce. This is your Prince of Whiskies. You're at night time. You've got that log fire. This is the one you put your feet back at late night. This is that little drink for yourself. There's the oils on this one. Dry fruits, oils, a little bit of the sootiness actually. There's like a. We get that. It's got a medium to long finish on it.
Yeah.
This one I want to do the wood tests on these ones because I want to compare it to the next one. Okay. So I'm doing this more because I want to compare it to the double that we're going to be doing. I'm doing more usual. Taking the wood, so it's more, very mellow. There's not a lot of like woodiness coming out. You get. So I'm thinking it's very much matured in the American X bourbon casks. So there's not.
Yeah, there's not
great
tremendous
strength.
amount
A little bit.
sherry like sense coming through for me here.
Yeah.
That said,
So-
on the palate,
So
this is a better rounded whiskey, I feel, than the 11 or the 8.
yeah.
I mean, this is one of the best whiskeys in the world. It just is. Not to rank everything, but like this has been recognized as like there's what was it like a Scottish heritage whiskey or something like that. It's been inducted into the Whiskey's Hall of Fame, and it's truly just amazing every time I try it.
Yeah, and it was one of the anchors when in the 90s Diageo came up with what they call the classic 6 malts. And that was like a whole marketing campaign where they were taking different whiskies around the country. And obviously they were owned by Diageo at the time. But this was very much one of the anchor ones. You'd be getting the Lagavulin.
Ooh, a little bit of something that I came across that I don't know if you guys know.
Okay.
So Peter Mackey, in the 19th century, he was the distillery manager. And during the 19th century, he leased out Lafroig. And there was like a bunch of drama around like accusations of them stealing Lafroig's like recipes and stuff like that to try to copy what they were doing in the 19th century, which I think is really interesting because, of course, we look at Lagavulin now and we're like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's the best. It's fantastic. But reportedly they weren't able to duplicate it because even though they're right next to each other, the differences from distillery to distillery, just in like the water and such like that we're using, they weren't getting the same thing, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, and the one is Lagavulin. Lagavulin aren't focusing on doing lots of different bottles every year. Ardbeg, that they're doing those new bottles every year, giving us keeping us interested, maybe to a modern palate. Lagavulin is very much classic, sticking to they're trying to refine exactly what they've got. The only differences is the years we've got in Mr. Nick Offerman. Obviously, increased the bottles, and we've got that. But no, delicious.
Yeah. In fact, so delicious that I'm using a Lagavulin Glencairn. That's right, Lagavulin Glencairn.
Oh, well done, good for you.
Yeah, feeling good about that.
And that leads us nicely then onto the Distillers edition. Now this one they've kind of changed it to the light green.
They
got a greenish one.
Look at that drip on that bottle. It is dripping swag. It's got the golden embossed. What is that? A dragon on there?
It's the Scottish line. That you've got the Scottish thistle. You've got lots of symbologies of Scotland that are on the bottle. That's what it's a line. Do you see it? It's called the line.
I see that. Yes, they pulled out all the stops in this bottle.
This is it.
Lovely. I just love that. What color would you say? That's like a sage green.
It's that sage green. Yeah, there's that sage green, and
just a beautiful color.
That shows. So as I was saying, that they don't do any special bottles. What they do with the Distillers edition is they bring out a new version every year. Now it's the same mix, etc., but they actually label it each year. So the one we're trying, Ryan, is the 4/
Sorry.
Your microphone picks up everything.
That excites the whiskey molecules to get the vibrations of the cork. It's very scientific.
Take mine out. So the one that we're trying, Ryan, is distilled in '99, so just before the turn of the century, and bottled in 2015. So this is actually called LGV 4/504.
Okay.
So every year it changes. So I think, Chance, what are you trying? Are you trying 506 or 7?
I'm trying LG4504.
504? Then we have the same,
Oh,
the same bottle.
cheers.
Excellent. So we're all trying the same one. So this, if you were wanting to pick up an annual bottle of Lagavulin, this would be the one that you'd pick up, and you could then look at what the difference is between the double matured that we've got there.
And I just want to say that wasn't planned. Like, we did not know we had the same batch. That's fantastic.
Same batch. That's
but the technique is the same, right? Double matured in, I guess bourbon and
ex-bourbon,
sherry cask.
and then it's a PX sherry cask finish. As they've really picked up some quality sherry casks to put it into. And Diageo have got access to lots of really good now sherry casks.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
This is one of my
This one you are.
5
Yeah.
bottles.
Now you are getting sherry
Mm-hmm.
like that. And,
Yep. Just
and
beautiful compliment. A beautiful compliment to the smokiness and the peatiness.
Now,
Just
so this
lovely.
is 40. So it's 43% ABV as well. So they bring this really at the lower end of the ABVs. And they're bringing it out that Distillers edition. And also it's so the difference in each year, by the way, is that the distillery manager is choosing that cut-off point, which casks are going to take for bringing it together. So there's slight variations between years. If you were to read between the different years, you'd hear about people talking about some of the slight differences.
That's lovely.
It's beautiful. Just a beautiful scent.
Oh, and then when you're on the palate, the nectar. I mean, this just takes it up a little, like half notch of. You really like your 16-year-old, but then you have this one.
Oh.
Get a lot of nose. This one is like sweet. I mean, interesting when we say sweet, when we just like had, you say, well, they got a dryness to them, but
this one's sweet, but it's also got some of that salt to make it savory a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Like a candied bacon, maybe, or I say bacon all the time, but I like it's like a candied salt. It's really good.
I think you hit upon something that really gets at the heart of why I love these peated whiskeys that have been exposed to sweeter notes like sherry and PX sherry, is that it's that savory note that keeps everything from being too treacly or too sweet.
yeah.
You know, like if you just pour a glass of bourbon, there are differences between bourbons, but in general you get kind of uniformly sweet notes from bourbon, right? Rye is spicy, as is, I feel, barley also results in a more complex, spicier beverage, and the exposure to that PX really helps, I think, offset that spiciness, and the savoriness of the peat helps offset the sweetness, I feel, of the sherries.
It's been exposed long enough to sherry that you're getting a little bit of the difference when you're doing the rub test. If you've got from where you were earlier, Ryan, and go to now.
Yeah.
It's not like it. We've done these wood tests with other ones, and they've been a lot more stronger. So it's not like overpowering or anything.
Yeah, it's not like again the Glendronach Parliament 21, which is extensively sherry aged. This is, I feel, just a hint to offset some of the savoriness, and vice versa.
That's really delicious. It was really good. This is excellent.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that I could stare off into space for 45 minutes and just sip on.
It's good. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Oh,
a nice way to do it.
So good.
Anyway, guys, slange a little cool one here.
Slange. I did want to ask, what are you guys going to do for your finishing dram? Are you going to finish on the Distillers?
I'm going to just pour another one of these Distiller editions. It's just one of my favorite bottles that I have in my collection. So,
what about you, Chance? You're going to surprise us with something?
I'm jumping back to the 8.
You're going right back to the 8?
You want that assertiveness.
I do. That, and honestly, I've got about 1 dram left in the 8. Now that
finish it.
And so I'm gonna, and then I've killed a bottle of 16 and a bottle of 8 tonight, and I'll be able.
Good excuse to go.
That makes you a serial killer. Chance.
Oh, nice. Barley cereal, get it.
Yeah, that's where I went too with my brain. I was like,
oh, jeez, this is a good dad joke. I need to remember that one.
You don't need more dad jokes, Gary.
Yeah,
But
okay then.
I thought you had them all. I thought you had them all already anyway.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them, but I need to add that one. It's been a while since I've heard the old serial killer.
I like that so much. All right.
Okay, gents. I'm going to raise a glass to you. Oh,
Almost.
your last dram. I think you could do a whole musical just using the corks and say, can you guess the cork bottle from the echoes coming off?
Oh, that would
should
be
definitely be a sample and some EDM music,
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that'd be great. I'll see if I can find a DJ to mix it. Just me and...
Of course, I hope you gotta keep those corks in case you get any dry corks.
Oh, that will happen for sure.
Here's to you, gentlemen. Here's a holiday cheers.
Slange and Merry Christmas.
Tis the side of the year. Merry Christmas.
Well, that completes our gents' adventure at Lagavulin. Thank you for joining us this week on A Dram and a Blether, and as always, please drink responsibly.